Introduction: How habits shape the way you think. Most people believe mindset is something you are born with. They think some people are naturally positive, confident, calm, or focused, while others are not. Because of this belief, many people stop trying to change how they think. They accept stress, self-doubt, and negative thinking as part of who they are. But mindset is not fixed. It is slowly built, shaped, and rewired through daily habits, whether we realize it or not. Think about how your day usually starts. You wake up, check your phone, rush through the morning, and already feel behind. Small things irritate you. Your thoughts feel scattered. By the time the day ends, you feel tired, not just in your body, but in your mind. None of this happened because something big went wrong. It happened because of small, repeated patterns. These patterns slowly train your brain to react in certain ways without you noticing. Your mind learns through repetition. Just as your body adapts to how you use it, your brain adapts to what you repeatedly think, feel, and do. If you often rush, your mind learns urgency. If you often avoid discomfort, your mind learns escape. If you constantly criticize yourself, your mind learns self-doubt. Over time, these patterns become automatic. You no longer choose them. They simply happen. This is why mindset does not change through motivation or positive thinking alone. You can tell yourself to be positive, but if your daily habits still reinforce stress, comparison, and avoidance, your mindset will return to its old shape. Real change happens when habits change. Habits are the language your brain understands best. For example, imagine someone who wants to feel more confident. They read books, watch videos, and repeat affirmations. But every day they break small promises to themselves. They plan to wake up early, but hit snooze. They decide to exercise, but skip it when it feels uncomfortable. Each time this happens, the mind quietly learns a lesson. I don't follow through. Over time, confidence weakens, not because the person is incapable, but because their habits have taught the brain that their words don't matter. On the other hand, small positive habits slowly rewire thinking in the opposite direction. When you keep a small promise, pause before you react, or choose awareness over distraction, your brain starts to trust you. You begin to feel calmer, more in control, and more stable, not because life is easier, but because your mind is trained differently. This book is not about forcing yourself to think positively all the time. Life is not always positive, and pretending otherwise only creates frustration. This book is about building habits that quietly strengthen your mindset in real life, on busy days, in stressful moments, and during ordinary routines. The habits in this book are simple, practical, and realistic. They do not require perfect discipline or extreme effort. They require consistency. As you read, you may recognize yourself in the examples. That is intentional. These habits are not meant for perfect people. They are meant for people who feel tired, distracted, and overwhelmed, but still want to improve how they think and respond to life. Each habit may seem small on its own, but together they reshape the way your mind works. Mindset does not change in one day. It changes in moments, small moments, ordinary moments, the moments when you choose awareness, honesty, and consistency over comfort. This book will guide you through 10 such habits. Practiced daily, they will slowly rewire your mindset without pressure, without force, and without pretending to be someone you are not. Chapter 1. Awareness before reaction. Most people believe they are in control of their actions. They think they decide how to respond, what to say, and how to behave. But if you observe closely, you will notice something different. Much of daily life is lived on autopilot. Something happens outside, and a reaction follows almost instantly. A tone of voice feels rude, and anger appears. A plan does not work out, and frustration takes over. A mistake is made, and self-criticism begins without invitation. These reactions feel natural and unavoidable, as if there's no gap between what happens and how we respond. Over time, this automatic pattern creates a powerful illusion, the belief that emotions control behavior. When this belief settles in, people stop trying to change how they react. They say things like, "That's just how I am," or "I can't help it." In reality, what they are experiencing is not a lack of control, but a lack of awareness. They are reacting before they realize a choice exists. Awareness is the ability to notice what is happening inside you before you act on it. It is not about suppressing emotions or forcing yourself to stay calm. Emotions are natural, and thoughts will always arise. Awareness simply means you recognize them as they appear. You notice the tension in your shoulders, the tightness in your chest, the speed of your thoughts, or the emotional heat rising inside you. This noticing creates space. In that space, you are no longer completely inside the reaction. You are observing it. This small shift is powerful. When you observe a reaction, instead of being consumed by it, the reaction loses some of its force. You are no longer fully identified with the emotion. You are aware that something is happening within you, not that something is you. This difference may sound subtle, but it changes everything. Consider a simple example from everyday life. You're at work and receive a message that sounds short or cold. Before awareness, your mind immediately fills the gaps. You assume the other person is angry, disrespectful, or judging you. Your body responds as if this assumption is a fact. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense, and your tone changes. You either respond defensively or withdraw emotionally. Hours later, you might realize the person was simply busy or tired, but the stress, the emotional reaction, and sometimes the damage to the relationship has already happened. Awareness interrupts this chain. When awareness is present, you notice the reaction forming. You feel the tightening in your body. You recognize the story your mind is creating. Instead of immediately responding, you pause. You remind yourself that what you are experiencing is an interpretation, not necessarily reality. That pause doesn't remove the emotion, but it gives you choice. You may still respond, but you respond with clarity rather than impulse. The same principle applies to how you talk to yourself. Many people live with a harsh inner voice and are barely aware of it. A small mistake happens and the mind says, "I always mess things up," or "I'm not good enough." These thoughts appear so quickly and so often that they feel like truth. Because they feel true, they go unchallenged. Over time, they shape identity. A person begins to see themselves as incompetent, lazy, or flawed, not because it is true, but because it is repeatedly reinforced. Awareness allows you to hear these thoughts without immediately believing them. You notice the sentence forming in your mind. You recognize the emotional charge. You don't argue with it, and you don't accept it as fact. You simply observe it. This act of noticing weakens the thought's influence. When a thought is seen clearly, it loses its power to define who you are. One of the most common situations where awareness is missing is during stress and exhaustion. When energy is low, reactions become stronger and more automatic. For example, at the end of a long day, you may plan to relax for a few minutes. Without awareness, this turns into hours of scrolling, mindlessly eating, or avoiding responsibility. Later, guilt and self-blame appear. You tell yourself that you have no discipline or self-control. Awareness changes this pattern at its root. Instead of focusing on the action after it happens, awareness brings attention to the moment before it. You notice the mental tiredness. You feel the urge to escape. You recognize the automatic reach for distraction. That recognition doesn't force you to stop, but it gives you options. You may still choose to rest, but now it's a conscious choice rather than an unconscious reaction. Even when you choose the same action, the relationship with yourself changes. There is less guilt and more understanding. Awareness also plays a critical role in relationships. Many conflicts do not begin with major issues. They begin with small, unexamined reactions. A raised tone, a sharp reply, or a sudden silence can quickly escalate a situation. When awareness becomes a habit, you start noticing emotional signals before you speak. You feel the irritation in your body. You sense the urge to defend or attack. With that awareness, you can choose how to express yourself. You may still speak honestly, but you do so with intention instead of impulse. Over time, this builds trust, patience, and emotional maturity. It is important to understand that awareness does not develop instantly. In the beginning, you will often notice after you have reacted. This is normal. Then you will start noticing during the reaction. Eventually, you will notice before the reaction fully forms. This progression is natural and unavoidable. Each moment of noticing strengthens the habit.
There is no failure here. Awareness is built through repetition, not perfection. As this habit grows, your self-image begins to change. You stop seeing yourself as someone who overreacts or loses control. Instead, you begin to identify as someone who can observe thoughts and emotions without being ruled by them. This shift creates emotional stability. You feel less overwhelmed by your inner world. You begin to trust yourself again.
Awareness before reaction is the foundation of a rewired mindset. Without awareness, habits remain surface level and temporary. With awareness, change becomes deep and lasting. When you learn to notice before you react, you regain ownership of your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions. This is where real mindset change begins, not with force, but with understanding. Chapter 2. Keeping small promises to yourself. Confidence is often misunderstood. Many people believe confidence comes from talent, success, or recognition from others. They think confidence appears after big achievements, public wins, or external validation. Because of this belief, they wait. They tell themselves they will feel confident after they improve their life, but confidence does not work that way. Real confidence is built quietly. It grows in private moments when no one is watching. It is created through the relationship you have with yourself, specifically whether you trust your own words and intentions. Confidence is not about feeling strong all the time. It is about knowing that when you say something, you follow through. Every day you make small promises to yourself, often without even noticing them. You tell yourself you will wake up a little earlier, you plan to drink more water, you think about taking a short walk, stretching for 5 minutes, or completing a simple task you've been avoiding. These promises feel small and unimportant. Because they seem minor, breaking them feels harmless. But the mind does not measure promises by size, it measures them by consistency. Each time you break a promise to yourself, a quiet message is sent to your brain. My words don't matter. One broken promise may not feel serious, but repeated over time, these moments add up. Slowly, self-trust begins to weaken. You may not notice it immediately, but it shows up in how you think and feel. Planning starts to feel pointless. Motivation fades quickly. Discipline feels heavy and forced. Think about how you feel when you plan to do something and don't follow through. At first, there is relief. You avoided discomfort. You chose rest, distraction, or ease. But later, something else appears, a quiet disappointment. You might not talk about it. You might not even think about it clearly, but your mind remembers. This pattern repeats until something changes inside you. You stop fully believing your own intentions. You may still make plans, but deep down you expect yourself to fail. This is not laziness. It is not lack of ability. It is learned self-distrust. Keeping small promises reverses this process. When you do what you said you would do, even in a very small way, your brain takes notice. The action itself may seem insignificant, but the psychological impact is powerful. You begin to feel more stable and grounded. You start to trust your own intentions again. Each kept promise becomes evidence, evidence that you are reliable, evidence that your words mean something. Consider a simple example. You decide to read for 10 minutes before bed each night. One evening you feel tired, you feel tempted to skip it. If you follow the urge, nothing dramatic happens. But if you keep the promise, something subtle shifts. You don't just read, you reinforce an identity. You tell your mind, I follow through. Over time, this feeling compounds. Discipline stops feeling like force and starts feeling natural. This habit also changes your inner dialogue. When you regularly keep promises, self-criticism begins to soften. The voice that once said, "Why can't I ever stick to anything?" becomes quieter. In its place, a new voice forms, "I do what I say." This shift matters more than motivation. It changes how you approach challenges before results even appear. Many people struggle with this habit because they promise too much. They set goals that require high energy, perfect timing, and ideal conditions. When life interrupts, as it always does, the promise breaks. This creates frustration and reinforces self-distrust. That is why promises must be small and realistic.
A promise you can keep on your worst day is more valuable than a big promise you only keep when you feel inspired. Small promises build consistency. Consistency builds trust. Trust builds confidence. This approach also changes how you handle setbacks. When you miss a day, you don't spiral into guilt or self-blame. You simply return to the habit. The relationship with yourself remains intact. This creates emotional stability. You stop seeing mistakes as proof of failure and start seeing them as part of the process. Over time, this habit rewires your mindset deeply. You no longer identify as inconsistent or unreliable. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through. That belief changes behavior automatically. You don't need to push yourself as hard. Discipline feels lighter because it is supported by trust. Keeping small promises is not about productivity or performance. It is about self-respect. It is about treating your own words with seriousness. When you honor small commitments, you build a foundation that supports confidence, discipline, and long-term growth, quietly, gradually, permanently. Chapter 3. Controlling what you consume mentally. Most people pay attention to what they eat. They think about calories, sugar, junk food, and health, but very few pay attention to what they consume mentally, yet the mind consumes far more than the body ever does. Every day, your mind takes in words, images, opinions, emotions, and information from screens, conversations, in the environment around you. This mental intake happens constantly, often without awareness. You scroll while waiting, you listen while distracted, you absorb headlines, arguments, comparisons, and opinions without choosing them consciously. Over time, this constant mental consumption shapes how you think, feel, and react to life. Slowly, it becomes your mindset. Think about how you feel after scrolling through your phone for a long time. You may not remember what you saw, but you feel different. Your mind feels heavier, your attention feels scattered. You may feel slightly irritated, restless, or empty. This is not because you intentionally consumed something harmful. It is because your brain was overloaded with information it did not select with care. The mind is designed to process endless stimulation. When it is constantly fed new content, it never fully rests. Repeated daily, this creates a background feeling of mental noise. Even when nothing is wrong in your life, you may feel unsettled. This is not a personal flaw. It is the result of unmanaged mental input. The brain is deeply influenced by repetition. When you repeatedly expose yourself to negative news, online arguments, fear-based content, unrealistic lifestyles, or constant complaints, your mind begins to expect stress. It starts scanning for problems, even when none are present. You may feel anxious or dissatisfied without knowing why. Your nervous system stays slightly tense, as if something is always about to go wrong. This conditioning happens quietly. You may think, this doesn't affect me, but the mind absorbs patterns whether you believe it or not. Just like repeated physical habits shape the body, repeated mental input shapes emotional responses and thought patterns. Controlling what you consume mentally does not mean isolating yourself or ignoring reality. It means becoming intentional. It means recognizing that your attention is valuable and limited. Not everything deserves access to your mind. When you choose what to consume, you protect your mental energy. This is where awareness from the earlier chapter becomes important. When you pay attention to how certain content makes you feel, patterns become clear. Some information leaves you informed and calm. Other content leaves you drained, anxious, or distracted. Awareness allows you to make choices instead of absorbing everything automatically. Consider how you start your day. If the first thing you do is check social media or negative news, your mind enters reaction mode immediately. Before you have even lived your day, you're mentally responding to other people's problems, opinions, and lives. Now imagine starting the day quietly. You sit still for a few minutes, you read something meaningful, you focus on one simple task. The world outside is the same, but your internal state is completely different. These small choices, repeated daily, shape your mindset more than big decisions ever will. Mental consumption is not limited to screens. Conversations matter too. Spending time around constant negativity, gossip, or complaining slowly changes how you see the world. You may notice that after certain conversations, you feel heavier or more drained. This does not mean you judge or reject people. It means you protect your mental space. Choosing healthier conversations is an act of discipline and self-respect. This habit becomes especially important during stress and fatigue. When energy is low, the mind looks for easy escape. Often that escape comes through endless scrolling or mindless content. It provides short-term relief, but it increases mental noise later. Awareness allows you to notice this pattern. Instead of numbing the mind, you can choose rest that actually restores you, silence, stillness, or intentional breaks. Reducing unnecessary mental input also improves focus. When your mind is constantly jumping between information, it loses the ability to stay present. By limiting what you consume, you give your brain space to think clearly. Clarity leads to better decisions, calmer emotions, and a more stable sense of self.
Over time, this habit rewires your mindset. You become less reactive to external noise and more connected to your own values. You stop absorbing everything and start choosing intentionally. This creates inner calm that does not depend on the outside world being perfect. Controlling what you consume mentally is not about restriction or discipline for its own sake. It is about care. Just as you protect your body by choosing what you eat, you protect your mind by choosing what you allow in. Small changes in mental input create deep changes in how you experience life. Quietly, consistently, powerfully. Chapter 4. Practicing gratitude without forcing positivity. Gratitude is often misunderstood. Many people think it means pretending everything is fine or forcing themselves to feel happy when life is clearly difficult. They hear phrases like, "just be positive," or "others have it worse," and gratitude starts to feel like denial. Because of this misunderstanding, many people reject gratitude altogether. It feels fake, uncomfortable, or disconnected from reality. Real gratitude is not about ignoring pain. It is not about silencing frustration or pushing away sadness. Gratitude is about learning to see clearly. It means noticing what is stable, supportive, or meaningful without denying what is hard. Both can exist at the same time. The human mind is naturally drawn to what is missing or wrong. This is not a personal flaw. It is a survival mechanism. The brain is designed to scan for problems so it can protect you. But when this problem-focused attention becomes constant, it creates a mindset of dissatisfaction. No matter how much improves, your attention stays on what is lacking. Over time, this leads to stress, comparison, and emotional fatigue. When the mind constantly searches for what is wrong, it never rests. Practicing gratitude gently rewires this pattern. It does not erase difficulty, it simply balances the picture. It teaches the mind to recognize what is working alongside what is not. This balance does not create forced happiness, it creates emotional stability. You stop swinging between extremes of hope and disappointment. You become more grounded. Imagine a normal evening after a long day. You feel tired. Something didn't go as planned. Your energy is low. Without gratitude, the mind replays mistakes, conversations, or frustrations. You carry that mental weight into the night. With gratitude, you still acknowledge the hard parts, but you also notice something real and small. A quiet moment, a warm meal, a message from someone you trust. Even the simple fact that the day has ended and rest is possible. That small shift changes how the mind settles. Gratitude works best when it is specific and honest. Saying vague phrases like, "I should be grateful," often creates resistance. It feels forced. But noticing something simple and real, "This cup of tea calmed me," "This walk helped me breathe," "This silence gave me rest," feels natural. Over time, the brain learns to scan for moments of stability instead of only searching for problems. This does not make you passive or weak. Many people fear gratitude because they think it will make them complacent. They believe being grateful means accepting less or stopping growth. In reality, gratitude creates clarity. When the mind is not overwhelmed by negativity, you see situations more clearly. You respond instead of react.
You make better decisions because your emotions are more balanced. Gratitude does not remove ambition, it removes emotional noise. This habit becomes especially important during difficult periods. When life feels uncertain or overwhelming, the mind searches for safety. If it cannot find safety outside, it becomes anxious. Gratitude creates internal safety. It reminds you that not everything is broken, even when some things are. This sense of stability helps you endure challenges without losing yourself to them. Practicing gratitude does not require long routines or forced journaling. It does not require you to feel good. It can be as simple as pausing once a day and acknowledging one thing that supported you. One moment of noticing is enough. Over time, these moments add up. Slowly, your mindset shifts. You become less reactive, less resentful, less mentally exhausted. You still notice problems, but they no longer dominate your inner world. Gratitude is not about pretending to be positive. It is about being complete and honest in how you see your life. When practiced gently and consistently, it rewires the mind toward calm, resilience, and quiet appreciation. This is not loud optimism. It is silent strength. Chapter 5. Changing the way you speak to yourself. The way you speak to yourself shapes your mindset more than almost anything else. This inner dialogue runs quietly in the background of your life. It comments on your actions, your mistakes, your efforts, and your worth. Most of the time, you are not even aware it is happening. You simply feel its effects. Over time, this inner voice becomes familiar. Its tone starts to feel normal. Even when it is harsh, critical, or unfair, you accept it as truth because you hear it so often. What feels familiar begins to feel accurate. Many people speak to themselves in ways they would never speak to someone they care about. After a small mistake, the inner voice might say, "You always mess things up," or "You're not good enough." These statements feel true in the moment because emotions are strong. They go unchallenged, but repetition gives them power. When you hear the same message every day, your mind starts to believe it, not because it is correct, but because it is repeated. This is how self-talk slowly shapes identity. Think about a common situation. You plan to complete a task but don't finish it. Without awareness, the inner voice reacts immediately. It labels you as lazy, weak, or disciplined. Your body feels heavy. Motivation drops. The desire to try again disappears. This reaction does not improve behavior. It creates avoidance. The mind tries to escape effort to avoid more judgment. Over time, this pattern builds a mindset of self-doubt. Changing the way you speak to yourself does not mean lying to yourself or pretending everything is fine. It does not mean praising yourself for poor effort or avoiding responsibility. Healthy self-talk is honest, calm, and fair. Instead of saying, "I'm useless," you say, "Today was difficult and I didn't show up the way I wanted to." This keeps accountability without adding cruelty. Harsh self-talk does not make you stronger. It makes you tense. It drains energy and confidence. Supportive self-talk, on the other hand, creates psychological safety. When your mind feels safe, it is more willing to try again. This becomes especially important during failure. Failure is inevitable. Everyone fails. What matters is how you interpret it. Harsh self-talk turns mistakes into personal flaws. One failure becomes, "This is who I am." Healthy self-talk turns failure into information. It becomes, "This didn't work. I can adjust." When you speak to yourself with respect, mistakes stop defining you. The tone of your inner voice also affects how you handle pressure. When the voice is calm and supportive, you are more likely to take on challenges. You feel capable of effort, even when the outcome is uncertain. When the voice is critical, you avoid trying, not because you are weak, but because your mind wants to protect you from more internal punishment. This is why self-talk directly influences discipline. Changing self-talk begins with awareness. You start noticing how you speak to yourself during small moments. You don't need to argue with every negative thought. You don't need to force positive statements. You simply adjust the tone. You replace harshness with clarity. You speak to yourself the way a calm, honest friend would, direct but respectful. Over time, this practice changes your inner environment. Your mind becomes a place where effort feels safe, you recover faster from setbacks, you stop wasting energy on self-attack. Confidence grows quietly, not because you are perfect, but because you are fair with yourself. The way you speak to yourself becomes the environment your mind lives in. When that environment is respectful, honest, and steady, growth becomes possible. Not through pressure, not through force, but through consistency and trust. Chapter 6. Moving your body every day. Many people think of physical health and mental health as separate things. They believe exercise is only about fitness, appearance, or strength, while mindset is something that exists only in the mind. In reality, the body and the mind are deeply connected. How you treat your body directly influences how you think, feel, and respond to stress. Daily movement is not just a physical habit, it is one of the most effective ways to support and rewire your mindset. The human body was designed to move. For most of history, movement was a natural part of daily life. Today, long periods of sitting have become normal. When the body stays inactive for too long, the mind begins to feel restless and heavy. Thoughts feel slower, emotions feel harder to manage, motivation fades. This does not mean you are lazy or disciplined. It means your body is missing something it needs. Think about a typical day where you sit for many hours. By the end of the day, you may feel mentally exhausted even if you didn't do much physically. Small problems feel bigger than they really are. You feel irritated more easily. Your patience becomes shorter. Your mind feels crowded. Now compare that to a day when you take a short walk.
Movement directly affects the brain. When you move your body, blood flow increases. Oxygen reaches the brain more efficiently. Chemicals linked to focus, calm, and mood are released. Stress hormones begin to decrease. This is why movement often creates mental relief, even when nothing else changes. The body sends a signal to the mind that it is safe to relax. Many people avoid movement because they believe it must be intense to be effective. They think exercise only counts if it is painful, long, or exhausting. This belief creates resistance. When movement feels like punishment, it becomes difficult to stay consistent. In reality, the mind responds to movement, not intensity. Simple movement is enough to create benefits. Walking, stretching, light exercise, or even moving around the house can reset the nervous system. These small actions reduce mental tension and bring clarity. The goal is not to push your limits. The goal is to reconnect with your body. Daily movement also improves emotional regulation. Stress does not disappear, but your ability to handle it improves. When you move regularly, your body learns how to release tension instead of holding it. This makes it easier to respond thoughtfully instead of emotionally. Over time, you recover faster from stress and return to balance more easily. This habit also builds discipline without pressure. Choosing to move your body every day, even for a few minutes, reinforces a powerful identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who takes care of themselves. This identity builds confidence quietly. You do not need dramatic physical results to feel the mental change. The consistency itself creates self-respect. Movement is especially powerful on low-energy days. When you feel tired, unmotivated, or mentally heavy, movement often feels like the last thing you want to do. But this is when it helps the most. A short walk, a few stretches, or gentle movement can shift your mental state. Often, motivation appears after movement, not before it. Over time, daily movement rewires your mindset toward resilience. You become better at handling discomforts. You feel more present in your body and less trapped in your thoughts. The body supports the mind, and the mind supports the body. This balance creates stability. Moving your body every day is not about forcing discipline or chasing perfection. It's about staying connected to yourself. When movement becomes a daily habit, you feel more alive, more grounded, and more capable of facing everyday challenges, quietly, naturally, consistently.
Chapter 8. Doing one difficult thing each day. Most people avoid discomfort whenever they can. This is natural. The mind is designed to protect you. It looks for comfort, ease, and familiarity because those signals once meant safety. There is nothing wrong with this instinct. The problem begins when discomfort is avoided all the time. When the mind rarely faces difficulty, it becomes sensitive. Small challenges start to feel heavy. Simple tasks feel exhausting. Confidence slowly fades, not because you're incapable, but because you stop testing your ability to endure discomfort. Over time, the mind learns to retreat instead of engage. Doing one difficult thing each day is a simple habit that quietly strengthens your mindset. The difficulty does not need to be extreme or dramatic. It only needs to create a small amount of resistance. This habit works because it teaches the mind that discomfort is not dangerous. It is temporary. It can be handled. Think about how often comfort guides your choices. You delay a task because it feels boring or overwhelming. You avoid a conversation because it feels awkward. You skip efforts because you feel tired. Each time this happens, the mind receives a message that discomfort should be avoided. Over time, that belief becomes a behavior. That behavior shapes behavior. Now imagine choosing one small hard thing each day. You do it deliberately. You don't wait to feel motivated. You don't try to do everything at once. You choose one thing and face it. It might be starting a task you've been putting off, making a difficult phone call, going for a short walk when you want to stay still, or speaking honestly instead of staying silent. The action itself may be small, but the psychological effect is powerful. You prove something to yourself. You show your mind that discomfort does not control you. You experience resistance and you move through it. This builds trust and confidence quietly. Courage is often misunderstood as fearlessness. In reality, courage is the result of repeated action in the presence of discomfort. Every time you choose difficulty voluntarily, your mind becomes stronger. What once felt intimidating starts to feel manageable. The nervous system adapts. You stop reacting with fear and start responding with clarity. This habit also changes how you see yourself. Identity is shaped by behavior. When you consistently avoid discomfort, you begin to see yourself as someone who hesitates. When you consistently face small challenges, you begin to see yourself as capable and resilient. This shift does not come from positive thinking, it comes from experience. Doing one difficult thing each day is especially important during low motivation periods. On days when energy is low and effort feels heavy, choosing one hard thing keeps momentum alive. It prevents stagnation. It preserves self-respect. You may not feel productive, but you feel grounded. Over time, this habit rewires your mindset toward resilience. You stop fearing discomfort. You stop overthinking challenges. You trust yourself to handle difficulty as it arises. Life does not become easy, but you become steadier. Doing one difficult thing each day is not about punishment or suffering. It's about growth through choice. Small voluntary discomforts builds a strong, calm, and disciplined mind. Quietly, consistently, without force. Chapter 9. Reflection instead of escapism. When life feels uncomfortable, the mind naturally looks for escape. This is not a weakness, it's a protective response. The mind wants relief from tension, stress, or emotional discomfort. Escape does not always appear in obvious or destructive forms. Often, it looks normal and harmless. It shows up as endless scrolling, watching videos without attention, eating when you're not hungry, sleeping more than you need, staying constantly busy so you don't have to think. These behaviors are not wrong in their own right. They become a problem when they are used to avoid thoughts and emotions that need to be felt and understood.
Escapism feels good in the moment. It distracts the mind. It creates a short pause from discomfort. But this relief is temporary. When escape becomes a habit, nothing is resolved. Emotions remain unprocessed. Problems stay open.
Over time, the mind becomes heavier, not lighter. The discomfort you avoid today does not disappear, it returns later, often stronger and more confusing. Reflection is the opposite of escape. Reflection means turning your attention inward instead of running away from it. It means allowing yourself to notice what you feel without judging it or trying to fix it immediately. Reflection is not self-criticism, it is not overthinking, it is simple presence with honesty. Think about a common situation. Something goes wrong during the day. You feel frustrated, disappointed, or hurt. Without reflection, the evening becomes an escape. You distract yourself until the day ends. The feeling fades temporarily. But the next day, the emotional weight is still there. You may feel irritable or tired without knowing why. With reflection, you take a few quiet minutes. You acknowledge what happened. You notice how it made you feel. You don't blame yourself. You don't analyze every detail. You simply allow the experience to be seen. This small act helps the mind release tension. What is acknowledged does not need to stay hidden. Reflection also strengthens learning. When you reflect on your actions, choices, and reactions, patterns become visible. You begin to understand what triggers you, what drains you, and what supports you. This understanding allows you to adjust your behavior calmly instead of repeating the same cycles. Growth happens naturally when awareness is present. Many people avoid reflection because they believe it will make them feel worse. They think sitting with their thoughts will increase sadness or anxiety. In reality, unexamined emotions create more discomfort than examined ones. What is unclear feels threatening. Reflection creates clarity, and clarity reduces fear. Reflection does not need to be long or structured. It does not require journaling or deep analysis. It can be as simple as asking yourself one honest question at the end of the day. What did I feel today? What am I avoiding? What did this situation teach me? These questions guide the mind toward understanding instead of escape. Over time, choosing reflection instead of escapism rewires your mindset. You become more emotionally aware. You respond to life with more understanding instead of avoidance. You stop running from discomfort and start learning from it. Reflection is not about fixing everything at once. It is about staying connected to your inner world. When you reflect regularly, your mind becomes a place of honesty, clarity, and quiet growth. This is where emotional strength is built. Chapter 10. Choosing consistency over intensity. Many people begin self-improvement with intensity. They feel a surge of motivation and decide to change everything at once. They wake up earlier, follow strict routines, cut out habits overnight, and push themselves hard. For a short time, this feels powerful. They feel disciplined, focused, and in control. Then, life happens. Energy drops, stress appears, motivation fades. One missed day turns into several. The routine collapses, and disappointment follows. Instead of learning from the experience, many people blame themselves. They assume they lack discipline or willpower. This cycle repeats again and again. The problem is not effort. The problem is the belief that intensity creates lasting change. Intensity is emotional. It is driven by excitement, urgency, and strong feelings. When those emotions disappear, as they always do, intensity disappears with them. Consistency works differently. It is quiet. It does not depend on motivation. It depends on repetition. Consistency means showing up in small ways regularly. It means choosing continuity over perfection. It means doing something even when it feels unimpressive. This approach may feel slow, but it is powerful. Consistency trains the brain to expect stability instead of extremes. Over time, this creates real change. Think about learning any skill. If you practice intensely for a few days and then stop, progress fades. If you practice a little every day, improvement becomes natural. Mindset works the same way. Small habits repeated daily shape how you think, feel, and respond to life. Consistency also protects you during difficult periods. On low-energy days, intensity demands too much and leads to quitting. Consistency allows flexibility. You can do the minimum and still stay connected to the habit. This prevents guilt and self-criticism. You don't feel like you failed, you feel like you showed up. This is important because habits are not built on perfect days, they are built on ordinary and difficult ones. Over time, consistency builds identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who starts strong and gives up. You begin to see yourself as someone who shows up, even imperfectly. This belief changes behavior naturally. Discipline stops feeling like force, it becomes part of who you are. Choosing consistency over intensity also changes your relationship with time. You stop rushing results, you stop comparing progress, you focus on what you can do today. This creates patience and reduces pressure. Growth becomes calmer and more sustainable. Consistency is not exciting, it is not dramatic, it rarely feels impressive, but it works, it is reliable, it is what allows habits to stick and mindset changes to last. When you choose consistency, you choose sustainability. You choose self-trust over self-pressure. You stop chasing short bursts of motivation and start building something steady. This is the core of silent discipline. Small actions, repeated daily, quietly changing who you become. Final chapter: Living with a rewired mindset. A rewired mindset does not mean life becomes perfect or free of problems. Challenges still appear, difficult days still exist. What changes is how you respond. Instead of reacting automatically, you pause. Instead of avoiding discomfort, you face it. Instead of judging yourself harshly, you understand yourself with more patience and clarity. Throughout this book, each habit has quietly reshaped the way the mind works. Awareness helps you pause before reacting. Keeping small promises builds self-trust. Controlling what you consume mentally protects your inner world. Gratitude brings balance without denial. Kind self-talk softens inner resistance. Movement strengthens emotional energy. Facing difficulty builds courage. Clearing mental clutter creates calm. Reflection replaces escape. Consistency creates lasting change. None of these habits are dramatic on their own. Their power comes from repetition. Small actions, repeated daily, slowly change how the mind expects life to feel. Over time, the mind begins to expect growth instead of fear, stability instead of chaos. This is what rewiring feels like. It is not sudden, it is steady. Living with a rewired mindset means you stop waiting for motivation. You act even when motivation is low. You stop blaming circumstances and start taking responsibility without self-criticism. You understand that progress is not created by intensity, but by showing up again and again. You also become more patient with yourself. You recognize that change takes time. Instead of quitting when you fall short, you adjust and continue. This patience becomes strength. It builds confidence that does not depend on perfect days. A rewired mindset allows you to live with intention. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of drift. Life feels clearer, calmer, and more manageable, not because it is easier, but because you are stronger within it. This is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of a new way of thinking, a mindset built through small, honest habits, a mindset that supports growth, resilience, and inner peace. You do not need to be perfect. You only need to be consistent.